Hello, everyone. I am Claudiu Murgan, the host of the Spiritual Inspire podcast, and my guest today is Lucia René. Lucia is a mystic and a spiritual mentor to thousands of people around the world. Her exploration of consciousness has spanned 50 years. She's an ordained Buddhist monk and has a classical spiritual background, but she is best known for continually pushing the envelope of new paradigm consciousness. Lucia doesn't just talk about how to expand consciousness, she helps people do it. Through activations, guided meditations, and transmissions of light, she shows people how to navigate alternate dimensions and go places in consciousness they've never been. Her award-winning Unplugging the Patriarchy is more than a mystical experience than a book. It has helped thousands of people shift their perception of the troubled world in which we live. Lucia's strong suit is her ability to communicate in her crystal clear terms complex spiritual ideas. Her specialty is mysticism, the ability to navigate alternate dimensions, and she uses the sacred voice to help others do the same. Lucia, thank you very much for joining me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
I will start by mentioning something that a lot of people are going through in the past and nowadays as well. They are disappointed with a form of structured religion, and they dip into alternative spirituality such as Buddhism, Hindu, Zen. How did you step on your own spiritual path?
Well, when I was in my early 20s, the TM people came to town, the Transcendental Meditation, which was very popular in the 1960s, and I was at university. So I signed up for their little course, and I was initiated and got my mantra, and that's the way I started meditating. For 11 years, I meditated, and that was an exposure to Hindu tradition for me. And then when I was in my early 30s, I met my teacher that I had been seeking, and he was a mystic and had had many past lives where he had mastered many disciplines and had been fully self-realized in many lives. So he taught a variety of things. He taught mysticism, and mysticism involves, even if you're not a seer, it involves acquiring a little bit of psychic perception to help you get through the day. And he taught Zen, he taught Hindu, he taught Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, Tantric Buddhism. He taught many, many disciplines. So it was this beautiful, well-rounded education that I was privileged to receive for 17 years. And then he left the body, and I realized I still had a lot of emotional baggage because he didn't address that. I think as a man, he didn't address it. It wasn't particularly interesting, and he hadn't needed it because, you know, once you've been enlightened in another life, you reclaim the enlightenment, and it's far more simple for a person in that status. So I began studying with female teachers like Leslie Temple Thurston, who has a beautiful book, The Marriage of Spirit, and Pamela Wilson, the Advaita Vedanta people, who point to, oh, it's all within, you're seeking outside, but just look inward. So it ended up being this well-rounded education, which I have now taken and tempered because I can see the incremental changes as we're going through the transit, the shift, the ascension, and so on. So that, you know, your traditions always have to be tempered by what's going on, the vibration that's coming up from the earth. And this is kind of the thing that people are missing. If they're locked into something very traditional, then it's a belief system. Even when you enter the spiritual path, New Age can be a belief system. They're very stringent ideas. If you go to a traditional Buddhist teacher, it's a form and structure of how to practice, and form and structure has gone out the window. We're in a time that is formless, so it has to be tempered by what we're experiencing here on the earth at present.
Yes, and I always say that we are born into a specific religion because of our parents, and that's normal. But from there, we can evolve based on our experiences, based on our soul searches, and decide what's best for us. We shouldn't be ashamed or feel guilty that we are moving away from the religion we were born into.
Yeah, and you point to something very significant at this time. I think we as human beings, having grown up in a developed country, are programmed to fear change. And this time is all about change. And so you're absolutely right to have the courage to step off into the unknown and explore something new that involves change, doesn't it? So that's what everybody's being faced with right now.
Yes. And from that point on, you evolve into being ordained as a Buddhist monk instead of a Buddhist nun. How unusual is that?
Yeah, that was my teacher, my mystical teacher, who had a strong Buddhist tradition in addition to mysticism. And he felt, he did a lot of work with women to help them reclaim their power, because women have been treated as second-class citizens for 5,000 years in the patriarchy. And we all chose that as a learning, but he saw that that learning was coming to an end, as indeed it has now. And women need to move up into an egalitarian role, in my estimation. So he spent a lot of cycles of time training his women in how to reclaim their abilities, their power to stand in their truth, and so on. And so he was an esoteric teacher. Exoteric is the principles, the guidelines, the do's and the don'ts, but esoteric is transmission, taught through transmission and sitting with the teacher. So it's a far more advanced teaching. And he felt he gave the same teaching to the men and the women. He didn't want to relegate them to being nuns. So it was just a statement that he made, that he ordained everyone as a Buddhist monk.
Beautiful. And this one leads into what you just said, that it was more experience than just theoretical side of it, of things, of teachings. So what's your take on belief versus experience? I think you are doing it in the same way now.
Yeah. So I think belief is key. Well, belief is key throughout, because we start with belief, and belief can become knowing. Yeah. And if we know something is possible, if we focus on something, we can become it. So it's a matter of setting your sights on literally whatever you want. But belief is now, if it's a rigid belief, it depends. We've moved from a time, let's start here. We've moved into a time which is formless. So we've moved out of a time which is all about form and structure. We have hierarchies, we have presidents, vice presidents, we have governments, and so on. And we have a global system now. So it's very much hierarchical, and that's form and structure. That has started to crumble, right? We can see that around us in the world. This is what's causing all of the problems. But if you adhere to a very strict form or structure, this is the issue. There's no problem per se with form. If I want to, let's say, create an offering on my website and bring that in and give a teleconference or a Zoom presentation, but then if it no longer serves, I have to be unattached and let it dissolve again and replaced by something else. So again, it comes back to change. We're very concerned with form and structure. We're attached to form and structure. And it's our attachments, as Buddha said, life is suffering. Life in ignorance is suffering. Suffering is caused by attachment. And there is a way beyond attachment. And that's the invitation on the table now, is to learn about non-attachment and being able to bring form into existence, but being able to let it go again. So again, you're coming back to those rigid belief systems. But then there's another piece of that, which is, my teacher used to say, belief is key. If you believe you can become self-realized, that's your starting point. And if you focus on that, you can become that with grace, with the advent of grace. But belief eventually moves into knowing. If you really are seeking that and you associate with other people who are seeking that or who have realized that, then that belief transitions into a knowing. And when you know it, when the tumbler falls into place inside of you, that's it. Yeah. Then it becomes a reality, or it can become a reality.
Yes. And regarding the attachment, I will add that, yes, we are very attached to our statements as well. And it's very hard for us to go back and revise those statements and, let's say, acknowledge that we've been wrong. We are afraid to have this acknowledgement and apologize for things we've done, let's say 2 weeks ago. And now it proved that we were wrong statements, wrong decisions. And we prefer to stick to the same or double down on those decisions and dig deeper ourselves into that hole instead of coming out and telling people, yes, I made a mistake, I apologize, and I'm not attached to my previous statement. Let's move forward.
Yeah. That takes humility, doesn't it?
Exactly. And I think we lost that along the way.
Yeah, well, it has to be cultivated. It has to be recultivated. We've been taught to be special, to project a certain image in order to get through life, to seek goals outside of ourselves. But unless we can continually be in what I call beginner's mind, it's a Zen concept. The problem with spirituality is we don't know what we don't know.
Yes.
And this is endless. Consciousness is unlimited. And so it doesn't matter how much you evolve. It doesn't matter how much you figure out. Always you're here and you're resting on a plateau and you don't know what you don't know here. Yeah. So best to always be humble and have a beginner's mind and say, well, okay, I know this so far. I can only speak from my own experience. Yeah, but this is what I have learned. Let me help you as a mentor walk down this path because I've traversed this path. I can't tell you how to do it, but I'm happy to share my experience with you. That's a more humble approach, no?
Yes, because it's hard to learn the infinite. Even if you step into the infinite, it's very hard to comprehend that type of knowledge. It's huge. I mean, our mind cannot comprehend. Yes.
Exactly. And that's why working with the mind, I do it through meditation and also a little bit through processing. But the mind has to be retrained to realize the mind has literally been taught. We've lived in an age of reason. It has to run the whole show. It has to make all the decisions for the live stream. And it's completely overwhelmed with this job. So little by little, you can explain to your mind as you meditate, we're going into a completely different experience. If you stick with me, mind will become universal mind. Yeah, you're going to. But would it be okay if I went more in the line of experience or dealing with the emotional body? And the mind will always agree if you give it 100% of your attention and you talk to it.
Yes, yes, beautifully put. I would like to read the back cover blurb of Unplugging the Patriarchy. Just below the surface of our modern world lurks a hidden energy structure created purposefully during the 5,000-year patriarchy to limit the consciousness of each and every human being. When three women trained in the mystical arts unite to take this structure apart, they are catapulted into the corridors of power, the recesses of their own minds, and the expanding consciousness of a new age. Let's talk about this beautiful book, please. What was your goal writing it?
Well, I published it as a fiction simply because it's hard for people to quantify that those could have been real experiences. And to talk about the book, we really have to talk about it on two levels. One is it was incredibly personal. And change, if we invoke change in the world, it is. This is where it begins. If we want to see less corruption in politics, we need to look for the corruption that still exists here and be willing to change, come back to this horrifying prospect of change, we have to be willing to change ourselves. So these were three women who were very, very keen. They'd been trained as mystics. They all knew how to do emotional processing. They all meditated. And because when you form a circuit like that, you understand that it doesn't just increase the power of the work that's being done 3 times over, it increases it exponentially. Mm-hmm. And those skill sets and talents form a circuit that kind of bridge any gaps that might exist. So it was a very tight collaboration that these 3 women entered into and succeeded at. But the other piece of that, I guess you could call it dharmic. So dharma is finding out what we are specifically here to do and following right action in terms of being of service, doing our dharma. And for each of these women, we've gone through a long trajectory where we came in to help facilitate in some capacity or another the experiment in consciousness as it was seeded here on Earth a very long time ago. After Atlantis fell, we signed on for a second tour of duty in order to ensure that the experiment didn't fail. And we had very specific skill sets. And when we came together, it was rather like a bomb squad. So you say, okay, we have a ticking time bomb and it's called the patriarchy. It needs to be, wires need to be snipped. And so the book ends up being the story of how these 3 women went in and shared the responsibility for doing work on an energetic level. So this was 20 odd years ago that this project happened. And as we know, we can make changes in the subtle on an energetic level, but it takes it a long time to filter down into the physical world. Well, now you look around you and you say, oh my God, those systems are indeed crumbling, because we identified all of the primary systems and we examined each one and our personal buy-in to them, just as I said before. So if we have a World Trade Center and taking over global trade, where is that here? Why am I reacting to that? How do I solve that here? And you can only help with your dharmic task of dismantling the underlying structure out there energetically if you're willing to own making the change here first, because you have to be neutral in order to do that. So it's a beautiful book of female collaboration, and it's also, I wrote it like a detective story. So I wrote it, my discovery process that I went through. And I started from square one. I didn't know how the world worked. I was told to figure it out and started reading, just did 6 months of intense research. Now this information is far more readily available, so it's not so difficult for people if they are willing to open their minds and open their heart and figure it out, no?
Yes, thank you. And do you see that the crumbling of the system, financial, political, religious, will be rebuilt in a way where the matriarchy will have a much more profound role and important role to lead humanity?
Absolutely, because what's necessary now, my feeling is we've come to a tipping point. So it's like we're in a roller coaster and we've gone up to the top, right? And that feeling when you start down and your stomach comes up into your mouth and you go, oh my God, I'm on the roller coaster and I'm in for it. So we're about to go into free fall. Yeah, we're going to have 2-3 months of pretty chaotic exterior goings on. And it's going to be necessary to let it fall, because the phoenix can't rise from the ashes until it burns, basically. So these systems, we've known for years. If you ask anyone, are the systems in the world corrupt? Yes. Would you like to see them fall? Absolutely, as long as it doesn't affect me. All right. As long as I can pay my mortgage and put food on the table and I'm not inconvenienced, yes, let's let this. Well, it doesn't work like that. We're all going to be affected because literally the foundation that we've been standing on of globalism is crumbling. And we're going to have to take it down to ground zero. And only then will we be able to look around ourselves and say, what here is recyclable? What here can we use? What needs to be discarded? And that's got to happen in a very organic, grassroots way from a community level. We're going back to community, to tribal, to a very organic type of mindset and lifestyle, like it or not, because out of that growing organism will we be able to see the pieces that we need to put back in together. And it will be rebuilt, but it will be rebuilt on the energies of the heart, in my estimation, not the navel center, which is power. That the patriarchy was all learnings, 5,000 years of learning about power. And that includes misuse of power, abuse of power. We're done with that. As far as I can see, the experiment in consciousness ended a couple of winter solstices ago, and we're in completely uncharted territory now. We're in the domain of the heart, and we have to relearn, revisit everything.
So you are saying that smaller communities will make their own rules. State rules might not mean so much as they are so powerful now. And we will be able to pretty much lead ourselves and do a barter system, or at least a trade system with other communities.
Mm-hmm. I would imagine that's where it's so chaotic. There's so much smoke in the air. It's very difficult to see because we're in the free fall now. So we're going to have to let the dust settle and then figure it out as we go along.
Yes.
Which is the beauty of it, because that will teach us foremost.
Yes. I heard you say that the planet is at home in multidimensionality. Nevertheless, we see Mother Earth being restless these days. So should we expect a natural event that will put to shame our debate about climate change?
Gosh, I don't know. I think the Earth, from her perspective, from our perspective, Earth changes are a very big deal. But from her perspective, it's like, I need to ease that. Or I have something in my back, I need to change it. And she makes changes to right her body. That's all. So I don't think I think she has reached, she's a soul, just as we are a soul, who has been on her evolutionary trajectory. I don't think she thinks much about, I think humanity has had every opportunity to change, to get right with the earth, to remember our correct relationship with the earth. It's no more humans shall have dominion over the earth and control it and take whatever they want. That's not the way the earth works. We can't live with her in reciprocity in that way. So she's given humanity every opportunity to learn that. If you haven't at this point, good luck. But that is the energy that's coming up from the earth. And if we listen to her, if we walk on her, if we tune in to her frequency, we can relearn that now, because it's not only underneath our feet, it's in all of nature. That's why for me, it's so important, meditation and processing and being in nature, getting a little exercise to move the energy through your body, but spending time in nature, because nature has never forgotten these things. And so if we want to attune to that, it's so present now. If we just enter into a meditative state and look around us at the plants, the trees, the rocks, the animals, they haven't forgotten. And we have a lot to learn from them,
Yes, and this learning will help us survive in the next phase of the earth and what we are going through. We just talk about that. So it's not, it's late, but it's not too late to at least try to reach these type of teachings, deep into them.
Yeah, it depends on your belief, right? Belief is key.
Yes.
And if you want to survive what's coming, and there are many of us who know we're supposed to survive and continue on and help recycle and rebuild the earth to help heal the remaining people, the people who choose that, then we can. And it's never too late to learn tools if you need them. So the tool of coming back to center now every day in a meditation, I mean, maybe it's just because I love meditation better than anything, but it's so vital at this point, because if you're constantly focused out here, it's chaos. That means we've got chaos here. There's no time that we're taking our attention from the outside, turning it in and stilling the mind and looking within, because what we are seeking is really within. And if we're in constant reaction to what's going on in the world, if we're constantly being triggered by things, then it behooves us to have an emotional processing technique to be able to deal with that, to take responsibility for it, to say the action may have been there, the words may have come from there, but the reaction is here. And I have complete control over my reactions. I can say, oh, well, that was interesting. So-and-so is a bit arrogant today, isn't she?
Yes.
But my reaction is based on how much arrogance is left here, right? That's the taking responsibility part.
Yes. And I know I put a lot of effort in the last several months not to be triggered by political events, worldwide events and news, and just read them from a neutral point of view. And it's not easy. Sometimes I succeed, sometimes I'm still triggered, sometimes I just treat them as funny things and brush them off.
Yeah.
But it's not easy, that's for sure.
No, it's not easy, but it's a matter of changing the habit. We have a habit of saying, that doesn't feel good. I don't want to be triggered. I'm going to resist or I'm going to run away. We have to change that habit and recognize that everything that comes into our field, we're creator beings. We are creating, we are pulling in experiences, and that's our higher self saying, look at this, you have something to learn here. There's something here that you need to free up. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. I have to ask you something on a sensitive subject. It's a fact that Yeshua promoted and exuded unconditional love for humanity. He was also the embodiment of Christ consciousness. My question is, which one comes first? Unconditional love through Christ consciousness, the other way around, or they surface at the same time?
Well, for me, and I think for most of us, it's something we have to work towards, because our programming, our conditioning, and most of us have had multiple lives throughout the patriarchy. That's been very traumatic. There's so much trauma that we have in the body, in the physical body, emotional body, and so on. And so unless we were very fortunate and had parents who taught us non-judgment, if the parent illustrated that, if they lived that, because the child maps to the parent to see, how do I navigate this world? If you didn't get that in childhood, then you have to, that's the natural state, I would say, but you have to relearn that. You have to dismantle what is here that obscures your ability to feel and to recognize that. So for me, we live in a time now where the earth has transited into what you were calling Christ consciousness. And I think that's beautiful terminology, because he did walk the earth and was a representative of that, and it was extraordinary. But the earth is in the same place in terms of evolution now. I mean, if you're looking for a second coming, that in my mind is it. That might be sacrilegious, but the earth is vibrating with Christ consciousness, which means non-judgment to anything in the exterior, right? All acceptance. So allowing everything to flow in and through the heart. That is unconditional love for everything. But another term for that would be neutrality. Mm-hmm. So whatever we've been programmed with, whatever conditioning we have, is being held here in an egoic structure, and it's simply obscuring us being able to live from here. So that's where the work is involved. It's just clearing that which obscures a more natural state. But it's possible now for any human being, I think, who wants to reside, to live from a place of unconditional love. It's just how willing are you to work through the obscurations.
And how easy is to manifest from the unconditional life point of being?
Oh, to manifest
yes.
things in your life, yeah. Well, the key to manifestation lies in who wants to manifest it. If it's the personal self who wants to manifest a better job, then it's the personal self fulfilling a desire. It's the personal self being, as we said before, attached, right, to a certain outcome. And life in ignorance is about suffering. Suffering is caused from attachment. So the personal self can fulfill desires its entire lifetime, but that will never make the embodiment happy. It has to come from, the manifestation has to come from what you might call the universal self. And the universal self only takes over and comes through when all of these things that need to be dismantled, that obscure pure consciousness, have been eradicated. So that is a lengthy process. That takes years, that takes lifetimes in order to do. But the good news is we can move very quickly now, because the energy of the earth has cycled up so high that, again, we come back to belief. Belief is key. If that's what a person really wants, I'm very big on setting intentions. Yeah. So if you speak out to the universe, I want to be able to manifest via the universal self what is correct for me, right? Not here, not fulfill desires, but to be able to clear what obscures my true nature and to manifest in service to humanity. You can do that now. You can do that very rapidly, but you have to be clear and you have to be specific. It can't just be, oh, I want to evolve, oh, I want to feel better, oh, I want to be of service to humanity. It's sort of like programming a computer. You have to be very, very specific in your intent and ask for specific things. If you ask the universe for something specific, you get it. The problem is, watch out, because you may all hell make break loose to facilitate that, right?
Yes, and the way I see it is, if one reaches the unconditional love state of being, then he will know or she will know exactly what the soul wants, what the universe wants for that particular person. So it's not a matter of just choosing randomly, but as you said, with a specific focus in mind. We reach at that level of consciousness when we know what's best for us, for our soul, for the life we are living right now.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not here. Yeah. It's a whole different way of operating, which is far more synchronous and intuitive and without thought. So if something is wanting to be seen, if something is wanting to emerge, it emerges. And then you notice and you go, oh, look, this is what's emerging. This is what wants to happen. And it didn't come from here. Yeah.
Indeed. Polarity is a different aspect of our life. So if an individual, let's say, decides to say goodbye to polarities of this existence, how she will perceive the world moving forward?
So you're saying the polarities that we hold, like victim
Correct.
and tyrant and
Yes.
arrogance and worthlessness, if we want to let go of those, then what would be the resulting view of the world?
Exactly. Yes.
You wouldn't be triggered anymore. There would be no triggers. There would be no processes kicked up because there is no judgment. It's a matter of, from the universal vantage point, seeing, knowing that every single human being on the planet is a soul that is perfect unto itself. And, I work a lot with people about identifying their soul's essence. When you stepped away from source, who were you? What lens did you want to view life through? What are the learnings that your soul came in? What is the service, the dharma that it came in to offer? Who are you exactly? And what are the talents and skill sets associated with that? And then if you want to kind of personalize that soul's essence, you could call it the higher self. The higher self guides every single person's life stream, no exceptions. So if that person is suffering in a particular way, if that person is in a chaotic marriage, if that person is dying, that is in their highest interest. So who am I to say as an individual, no, that's wrong. You shouldn't be in a chaotic marriage right now. You should leave that marriage. There may be learning taking place for that person that is crucial for their evolution. So if you're seeing life from that perspective, from the universal perspective, that is to see with more clarity, and that's the beginning of non-judgment and all acceptance, right? So solely to observe, and whenever things come towards this field, there's no reaction because there's complete neutrality. Does that make sense?
Yes, and in other words, the way I see it as a simple-minded person, I will look, okay, I'm suffering now. Let me be aware and analyze why I'm suffering. What's the lesson I have to learn from this experience? But the issue is people are not aware that this is a lesson. They see it as a suffering, and the suffering will continue and it will expand into over years. And as long as they don't understand that this is an experience, they won't be able to eliminate that component from their life, let's say suffering or lack of.
Yeah, I understand. And I think it comes down to, there are, as you're rightly pointing to, I think there are two types of human beings on the planet. There are those who are newer souls who are not aware, not self-aware, yeah? And there are those who have gained a certain level of self-awareness. So now it's possible to do self-inquiry. It's possible to examine. It's possible to stop and say, I am suffering. I need to learn why I am suffering, right? So there are two ways of playing out suffering. One is in the physical, and that's where somebody has a grudge and they hold on to it for 10 years and they die with it, right? But in their next lifetime, they have learned certain things that they carry forward. The soul carries forward in the database of experience. And that's a perfectly fine way to suffer and a fine way to live, right? But with self-awareness, the idea is you no longer have to play it out in the physical. You can short circuit that by learning to do processing, by learning to do self-inquiry and saying, okay, I've been triggered by this. These words triggered me. What is happening here? And it's actually quite simple. If you just drop in and meet the emotion that is welling up here, right? The mind may be going crazy and say, she shouldn't have done that. That was wrong. She's so arrogant, right? But you have to stop the mental story and simply drop in and say, oh, okay, anger and judgment are here. This is my invitation to look at my reactiveness, which involves at its outer layer, like an onion, it involves anger and judgment. Let me go into and really feel it. This is what wants to be seen now. This is the invitation for me. So let me meet it, acknowledge it, tell it that it's welcome here, and really, really feel into it. This is emotional processing. It's not that difficult to do. This comes back to simply changing our habits from doing this to doing this, right? Yeah.
Yes, very beautiful practical advice. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned meditation several times. You love to meditate, and yeah, it's a good advice for everyone who wants to, maybe step on the spiritual path. But there are some instances where people might be afraid that if they meditate and somehow they go deeper, they surrender, they might be taken over by not so friendly entities. Is that a fact or just fiction?
Well, I don't think you're taken over by entities because just because you open yourself up, you surrender and you go deeper. Always when entities come into someone's field, and I've had this occur, and it was a very difficult learning many, many years ago, but it's an invaluable learning now because I know how it works. And how it works is there's a contract and you make an agreement. If there's an opening in me, in my case, it was, I want to appear very important to my teacher. I want to impress my teacher. So it was arrogance. I've dealt with a tremendous amount of arrogance in my lifetime. And these entities came in and said, we could help you do that. And there was a sort of verbal contract that occurred in the dream plane where now I'm off with these things in my field. Well, the way to solve that problem is to close my opening. It's to deal with my arrogance, right? So even somebody could help take those things away from me, but I'd just pull something right back in if that opening still existed. So yes, I would say it is a danger on the path, but not until you get a whole lot further down the path. Because remember, we have a higher self, and that higher self is always pulling in precisely the experience we need at this time for our highest learning. Yeah. And that's a pretty advanced techie learning to be dealing with possession. And until you have the power to confront it and deal with it, it doesn't come along. So to simply open in meditation and surrender and go more deeply, I don't think there's anything to be afraid of.
Yeah, that's very reassuring. Thank you. And again, for the beginners, any other practical advices that they can start with, maybe small, and then take it from there, increase it from that moment on?
Yeah. Well, the best way to learn something, if you're unhappy with your life and you have become self-aware and you want to step onto the spiritual path, we always look, first of all, what interests us? Where is my attention being drawn? If your attention is being drawn to spiritual books, to learning, then that's a good indication. Good, I want to learn about this. There's something here for me. The best way to do it is to seek out the cleanest, the highest teacher you can find and sit with them. Because the advantage is, if you want to learn to meditate, they've been meditating for however many years. And the way we learn things in spirituality is not here. Most of the things can't be explained. They can only be felt and synthesized. And so if you have a teacher who's very good at meditation, you want to learn meditation, your awareness field will map to that person's awareness field, and it will, in a subconscious way, figure out what they're doing. The same thing, you want to make $1 million. You apprentice yourself to someone who's done that. It's a transfer of the mindset. You want to become psychic. You hang out with people who are psychic, because as they describe their experiences, you say, oh, that was kind of like the experience I had. Mine was muddy. That was crystal clear, but I think I'm going in the right direction. Yeah. So it's the body of awareness that maps to, just like as a child, we map to our parents to figure out how to navigate the world. We're mapping to the exploration of consciousness. If you want to learn emotional processing, find the best teacher that you can for that. Read the best books about that and clear up that piece of your life. Those, to me, are the two foundational building blocks. You get those two, and your life will change. There's no question about it.
Thank you. Lucia, you mentioned psychic abilities. Are we going to see these abilities increase with the new earth, the new transformation? We will be able to just mentally communicate with each other rather than using words.
Yeah, it's already here. And that's a really interesting question, because it's coming on in stages, as does any energetic, right? It can't come on full blown. It would be too shocking to people's system. So for a while now, clarity has been building, yeah? And it becomes easier and easier to see, oh, that person's intentions towards me are not good, or this person is my friend, this energy I like, yeah? The clarity has been increasing little by little. And what is happening now is that the energy of the earth, because the energy of the earth is stabilized in Christ consciousness. Everything that we are seeing, literally everything that is vibrating in a chaotic way, is a reaction to that, because this is calling us home. All we have to do is open and surrender to that and move into that awareness here, to find that awareness here within ourselves in all the ways that we've talked about, right? But this clarity has moved from increasing clarity to blinding clarity. And now we're in a situation where everybody's stuff is kind of right here up in their face, and it's here with clarity. And if we're not willing to look at it consciously, or if we're unable to look at it with consciousness, we are being forced to look at it in the physical world, because it's coming at us tenfold now. So we can't escape. We maybe are so involved in the experience, we can't recognize it as, oh, things are becoming clearer to me. But this clarity will continue to increase to the point where I think we communicate psychically. I mean, we already are. Those people who have cultivated that skill set, it's easier and easier. But yeah, that will definitely come more and more online. I mean, that's a nice way of outpicturing it. But right now, the way it's outpicturing is in you have to deal with your stuff.
I'm so happy that I signed up for this contract on this particular time. It's so exciting.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I'm here. Let's talk about the programs you are running these days.
Okay. Yeah, I do private sessions. And as I said, I work with people to find their soul's essence. That's the goal. But we have to work to clarify what obscures for a while until we can get down to that. But my skill set is, because I'm a mystic and because I worked with the structures of the patriarchy, it's very easy for me to see structures. So if there are structures blocking, I can see those. If they're in this life, if they're in a past life, if it's a linchpin life, I can see those things. Yeah. So I'm not a psychic, a seer, like my student Elizabeth Wood, who you've interviewed, right? Yes. Who I adore. She's a seer, you know, they've just got input coming all the time. I'm a mystic, and I had to develop to bring online my psychic capacity. But that's what I fine-tuned it for, is to be able to help people see their blockages and remove them. So, but this year, and I focused a lot on emotional processing for 10 years, emotional processing and changing that habit of running away from things and seeing things as an invitation. This year, I'm focused on meditation. And I've realized that in this world, it's so chaotic. Most people, it's difficult to have a meditation practice. So I'm, at least people tell me I'm good at doing guided meditations. And it's because I have this voice, right? So if you can use the voice to help someone navigate consciousness, explore, take them to different places that they haven't been anymore, the whole idea is to come to center. And there are different centers that are very much up in consciousness right now. There is the navel center, which is all about our relationship with the earth and our embodiment. There is the heart center, which, as you beautifully pointed out, is about Christ consciousness and non-judgment, unconditional love. And then there is this, which is the epicenter of the luminosity of source, you might say. And that's a techier way of inquiring into and merging with your soul's essence and then into source. Yeah. So those are the things that I'm focusing on this year is leading a guided meditation every month.
Thank you. Do you have any books on the works?
Any books? Please no. It was so hard to write a book. I thought about writing another one, but it's a lot of work. So I think I'd rather spend my remaining time working with people with meditation and inquiry, self-inquiry. And, there are some of us who have been here for a long time and we're on our way out. We are the first wavers that made sure the experiment in consciousness succeeded. And the people I work with, mostly women, it's very clear they're the second wavers. They're here because they know they're to live through this transition and to help heal the planet and rebuild. So my aim is to hand off as much as my mystical expertise as I can to as many people as possible.
So do you know right now if you are going to sign up for another contract on Earth or you're going to go to experience somewhere else?
Well, the trick is not to decide. I would, from the personal vantage point, say, no, I won't be coming back. But, you have to lead. The highest way to go out is to say, okay, if you need me to come back, I will do that. If that's in the highest interest, fine. If it's in the highest interest to go someplace else and have another experience, then I've done my time here.
And what is your feeling? Are we going to see the Sirians, the Pleiadians showing up anytime soon? I mean, physically, or that will be left for another time?
Oh, that's not my theater of expertise. Okay. I mean, they are here. I encounter them. I worked for many, many years with the Syrian High Council. And the Syrian High Council came in and coached me and trained me in certain things. After a while, if you work with guides like that, the trick is to no longer hold yourself separate and to allow it all to merge because it's all universal consciousness, yeah? So I operate with that knowledge now, but I work with a lot of different people, Arcturians and Pleiadians, and they come through in private sessions, because they're looking for their people. They're looking to help them accomplish their mission in this lifetime, whatever. So that's a big part of what I do. But physically, I don't know.
Thank you. Lucia, we're approaching the end of the interview. Any final thoughts?
Well, it's been a real pleasure to connect with you, and I thank all of your listeners and wish them well on their journey. If you'd like to connect, you can come to luciarené.com. I just released a YouTube to introduce this new meditation series, and it's called Navigating New Earth Energies. So I'm really excited about that. And it's a half an hour YouTube. That might be the easiest way because then it gives you the website and you can go from there if you like what you see.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to my viewers, thank you for watching. Share it, like it. Support me on patreon.com/Claudiu Murgan. Get a free copy of my book when you visit my website. And until next time, love and gratitude.